to this computer. Hello, Dr. Zina with you, another episode of Diversity House podcast. Um, Hello everyone who is watching us live. Hello to those who will be watching us. Today we are going to talk about, I love this topic. Self-compassion, setting boundaries, and the inner critic. Anything related to well-being? I love it. I love talking about well-being. Today, I'm going to be talking about these topics with Emma Thompson. Emma, thank you so much for being here. I was so excited and I was looking forward to this episode. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here with you.
Nice. Let's learn more about Emma. So who is Emma?
I am a counsellor and supervisor working right here in Sittingbourne in private practice.
Nice. Do you remember how did we know each other? Do you remember what happened?
I do. I do. I wandered into Diversity House because I was actually looking for directions somewhere else. And we just got chatting and just discovered that we have a lot in common with our views of well-being and compassion. And the next thing I know, I'm being asked to deliver a workshop on compassion, which was brilliant. And I loved doing it. And yeah, it was just a happy accident that brought me to you. I'm really glad it did.
Nice. Yes, I remember. It was one of the Wednesdays afternoons, I believe. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And since then, you became one of our valuable volunteers.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. How was your experience doing some volunteers with us at Diversity House?
Really, really nice. I like the fact that I got to come in and just meet so many really great people and get to make something of a difference. And running the workshops is so much fun because not only do I get to share something that I'm incredibly passionate about, but the everything that I get back from the people who take part, how well they engage and how much they want to share and talk about, and watching them, find these new tools and go, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And I always go away having learned something as well, because someone will say something, explain something, and it's just another perspective. So I've been very, very lucky. I'm very glad to have been there.
Nice. Yes. Now let's dig deep into your profession, your work. So tell us more about Emma's journey.
Well, I've actually just celebrated my 10th year of being in private practice as a counsellor.
Nice.
I became a counsellor, like so many of us do, by having counselling myself many years ago. And when the idea of having counselling was first suggested to me, I didn't really think much of it. I couldn't see how just talking to someone was going to help, but I gave it a go. Found a wonderful therapist who I stuck with, and it just changed my life and changed my perspective. And the next thing I know, I feel like I just want to go out and just stop random people and say to them, hey, I've just discovered this thing called counselling. It's brilliant. You should do it. I love it. And I just got very enthusiastic about it. And at the time, I was in a career that it was great in its way, but it didn't really suit me. And as I got better and as I learned more about myself, I thought, this actually is wonderful. I want to pay forward what I have gained through this. And
Yeah.
I started the training. I thought I'd just do the level 2 course and see how that goes. And something just clicked for me. It just felt so right for me. So I kept on working my way through the levels, becoming qualified. And the same thing with the clinical supervision I do, which is a way of supporting other counsellors. I had received very good supervision in my career. And again, I wanted to pay that forward to other professionals. So it's coming through the experience of having been in the other chair that put me in this chair.
What is the most valuable thing that you learned while you were you were counseling yourself and then you were looking for somebody to help you. What is it one thing that you said, oh, this is for me?
I think it was how different things could be once I understood myself, and that
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't just at the mercy of thoughts and feelings that came out of nowhere, that actually there were reasons for it, and I could engage with thoughts and feelings in a way that was just better for me. I wasn't as powerless as I thought I was.
Yes, that's powerful. I was not powerless as I thought I was. You know, the
Mm.
language here, I thought it's all about what we think. What we
Yeah.
think is not the reality.
No.
Yes, yes. And what motivates you on a daily basis to carry on and do your counseling?
My philosophy is that I can't change the world, I can't heal the world, but I can leave this little bit of it that I can touch a little bit better than it was. That's part of my spiritual belief, that I can change the world a little bit. And
Yeah.
I believe that the ripples of the work that I do spread outwards. So I might help someone who goes on to then have better relationships with other people in their life. And the other people in their life I wouldn't have met, but they're transformed by that change in relationship as well. So knowing that I am having that little bit of effect, and I think that that's where the change is. Change is in the small, steady things, not not the huge things. The huge things are important, but the small, steady things, keep going, and just watching people who have felt very stuck, very lost, very
Mm-hmm.
scared, deeply unhappy, and seeing them change in ways that are driven by them. It's not me. It's not for me to say to someone, well, you need to live your life this way or that way. Just find what it is that works for them and just live their life again. That's what it's all about. It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah. Given your 10 years experience, what are you finding that is working for most of your clients?
I use quite a mix of tools because I trained in several models. The compassion focused model is the one that I am making the most use of. It's not the model I originally trained in, but I did the training, I don't know how many years ago it was now. 4 or 5 years ago, I started doing the training. And I just, again, it's something that just really clicked with me. And the important thing that with counselling or therapy, it's like a buffet. You don't, at a buffet, you're not expected to take something from every plate, and your plate's going to look different from your neighbour's. So for me, this particular model clicked. For other therapists and other clients, other models might work best. And that's great. Of course it is, because, we're not one size fits all, we're humans. For me, it's the compassion focused therapy model. And so that's what I'm using. It works best for me in terms of my practice. If that's not what someone wants, then I'm happy to signpost them to someone who might be a better fit for them. That relationship's important. Compassion focused therapy was originally developed by Paul Gilbert, who leads the Compassionate Mind Foundation, which does a bunch of training and has resources not just for therapists but for everybody. I'm not on their payroll. I just genuinely believe in what they're doing. And they define compassion as a sensitivity to suffering in self and others with a commitment to alleviate and prevent it.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds very simple, but the more you think about it, the more power it has. And it's rooted in attachment theory, evolution, social psychology, developmental psychology. And I like the fact that as part of the model, it has what we call psychoeducation. Basically, lots of diagrams and explanations of this is why your brain is doing this thing. And that harks back to me for that feeling of I'm not as powerless as I thought I was, I'm not at the mercy of these things, that actually there's a good reason why these things are happening. Some of them psychological, some of them biological, some of them social. It has good reasons for it. And if we can understand why something's happening, I think we're in a much better position to decide what we're going to do about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of the buffet, and your plate does not necessarily need to look like my plate. This takes us
Exactly.
to comparison. We should not be comparing your life to my life. We are very different. We are individuals. Yeah. And yes, a buffet, you've got different things out there. You try, then find out what works for you. And then you pick up what works for you. And this is what you highlighted, what works for individuals. Yeah. Why do you think this compassion focused therapy works? I know you love it and it works. What makes it work for you and for your clients?
It's evidence-based. There's a lot of research showing that it does work, from an evidence point of view, which makes me feel a lot better. I think it works because, well, for me, it makes sense. And it's particularly good for people who are struggling with shame and self-criticism, and those are special interests and specialities of mine, perfectionism, imposter syndrome. This model works really well for them. So that's very helpful. And I like that it shows compassion as a strength. I think that there is a kind of cultural narrative around the idea that compassion is a bit soft. And it's not. It's very, very strong and very powerful. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of wisdom to be compassionate.
Yeah.
So I think it works because it's so powerful.
Yeah. How does it work with imposter syndrome? Can you give us an example, if you can?
Imposter syndrome is one of those interesting ones. It's one of those things that I think everyone experiences from time to time to
Oh,
a greater
yeah.
or lesser degree.
Yeah.
But people generally don't like to admit it. There's a lot of there's like a lot of belief that we have to put on a front. And in many cases, we live lives where that is necessary. We might have workplaces where it's necessary to always look like you are 100% sure of what you're doing, even when you're not, that any kind of vulnerability has to remain hidden. Some of us might live in social structures where we can't show vulnerability and admit that we're struggling with something, or we think we don't know something. Imposter syndrome is an interesting one in that it's generally the people who are very competent and are very good at things who are struggling with the belief that they're not. And the compassion focused model, and it's all tied up with the inner critic, looks at the reasons behind that belief. And when it comes to self-criticism and perfectionism and imposter syndrome, it is driven by fear of not being good enough, fear of being found out. So that little voice that says, actually, we can't do this thing, is not an enemy living in our heads that hates us. It's a part of us that is very scared and is trying to protect us. It's trying to say, don't do that thing because I'm actually really scared of what might happen if we don't manage it. Tries to convince us that we shouldn't try. And the compassion focused model takes that part and looks at it and engages with the fear, because the problem is, if you start shouting down the inner critic and saying, oh, shut up, or you're stupid or anything, all that's happening is you're setting up two parts of the mind in conflict with each other. Whereas if you can engage with the inner critic and soothe it and say, actually, I hear your fear, I get it, thank you, still going to do the thing, but thanks for the warning, I find that tends to work so much better.
I know, yes. While you are talking, I'm saying yes and yes, because only when I learned how to have a healthy conversation with the inner critic, which I call inner mean girl, only when I learned how to sit with her, have a nice conversation, shut her down, and move on, that in the past, before self-knowing and gaining all this knowledge, I used to ignore or not to do, avoid doing things because of fear, as you mentioned it. But now, because I know it's the inner critic or the inner mean girl is just, she's there to protect me, and I accept that and I appreciate that. But thank you very much for the warning, as you mentioned. But I'm here the lead. I am the driver. You can sit and watch. You are allowed to give me your opinion, but I am the decision maker. And it changed.
Yes.
It changed my life and the way I see things. So that's powerful. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. And it just shows the power of acknowledging and accepting what's going on inside us rather than fighting it.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, certainly. Accepting the situation, accepting what you are thinking of, accepting your feelings, feel your feelings. It's key stage of moving ahead.
Absolutely, it is. And that reminds me of one of my favorite quotations, which is from Carl Rogers, who kind of founded the modern therapy as it is. And he said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change.
Yes.
And it is very true. I think that it's easy to feel worried that if we accept ourselves, that means that we're just giving up, or that it means that we won't grow and won't change. It turns out that's not actually how it works.
That's interesting, actually. It might, yeah, yeah. If I accept the situation in a way I'm not, yeah, that's very interesting. It's for me to think about it later. Yeah, but now let's learn more about your experience of working with people struggling with anxiety, self-criticism, imposter syndrome, or chronic pain.
Yeah, that's definitely an area of interest for me through various experiences that I had and the amount of research and work and training that I've done myself. It's the experience of living with chronic illness and chronic pain especially can be very lonely, and the cultural narrative around disability, chronic pain, chronic illness is not good. Medical treatments can be very distressing, invasive, unhelpful, and plenty of people do have experiences where they are treated well, but those aren't the people that are coming for counselling. I see the people that have not had good experiences, and more than anything, they need their suffering to be witnessed and held. And that's part of this role, is not a case of getting someone to just okay, change as soon as possible. It all comes back to accepting yourself and actually sitting in that space with someone who's anxious, sitting in that space of being anxious. We have plenty of people, if someone says, oh, I'm feeling really anxious, most people's friends or loved ones will say, oh no, you don't need to be anxious, oh, don't be anxious.
That's
which
true.
in the short term, all right, maybe we need that little bit of kind of bucking up or reassurance, but in order to work through and change things, you need someone to sit with you in that space of anxiety and hear it and accept it and sit with that experience and say, I accept that you feel this way and this is how it is for you. Then the work can be done to move on, and that's very powerful as well.
Yeah. So if I want to have a session with you or one of the people who are watching this episode, what a session with you look like? What do I expect?
Okay, sessions last 50 minutes and are generally weekly or fortnightly. I work face-to-face. I've got a small room in my house. It's a counselling room. I also work online on Zoom. My core work is very what we call person-centered. So my role is to meet the client where they are. I'm
Mhm.
on a journey with them. They're in the driving seat. I'm holding a map. So I don't adopt a very manualized approach. I'm not going to say, okay, here's your exercises, here's your homework. It's going to be very exploratory. And I start by asking people, well, what is it that has happened to you? I guide them through questions. What has your life been like up to now? What is going on for you now? What has happened to you? And that's another Carl Rogers thing. I'm not looking at someone saying what is wrong with this person. It's what has happened to this person.
Yeah.
And then we talk about where do they want to go? What do they want counselling for? And again, it's not for me to say, oh, okay, these should be your goals. This is what you'd be aiming at. This is what being better looks like. It's for them. And generally I start, once someone makes contact with me, I will arrange a free introductory call to see if we might be a good fit, see if our availabilities match, check that policies and what I offer is okay with them, see what they're looking for. So you get the 20 minutes before you book anything in. And because it's private therapy, it's not restricted to a certain allocation of sessions. It's very much up to the individual. And in discussion with me, we work out, well, how many sessions, what's that going to look like, how are you going to know when you're ready to finish? Because of course the goal is that therapy will one day finish. We're always working towards an ending, and that ending needs to be managed properly.
Nice. Yeah. Mhm. Let's talk more about setting boundaries. What can
Mm-hmm.
what can you teach us about setting boundaries?
Boundaries, I think, has become something of a bit of a buzzword lately. There's a lot of people talking about boundaries on social media, which in some ways I think is a good thing. It's always good to explore these concepts, but I think sometimes the words can get misused. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of my definition, I would say that a boundary is something that we put around ourselves, not other people. So it's not a
Yes.
good boundary to say to someone, you can't do that, you have to stop doing that, or you have to do this, because then that's trying to control them. Having a good boundary is saying what we will do in the face of what someone else is doing. So, if it looks like, if you keep doing that, I'm going to have to leave. Or just struggling, because I can't give specifics, I'm struggling to come up with very vague
Yeah.
terms. Having good boundaries does require us to understand and accept ourselves, though, and work out, well, what do we need? What do we
Mm.
need from other people? What's reasonable to expect from other people? Because having good boundaries doesn't mean that we can expect everyone to treat us perfectly all the time. The only person we can control is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at what is going on and why certain things might bother us. So knowing ourselves and accepting ourselves will help us to build good boundaries. And the better our boundaries become, the more we understand and accept ourselves and treat ourselves well. So it's something of a virtuous circle. But the important thing is that boundaries are not about controlling anyone else. It's only about controlling ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of, for example, me having a meeting in my office, so instead of telling everybody in the house, keep quiet, I don't want any noise, or don't interrupt me in my office, if I put a note on the door and I close the door, does that mean I put a boundary?
To a point, yes, but it's still saying to other people, okay, you can't do this. And in certain circumstances, in certain organizations, you might have the right to do that. But a different boundary might be, okay, I'm going to go and do the podcast. I'm going to record the podcast somewhere else.
I'm talking about being in the house with, let's say, yeah, your family members.
I think that's where boundaries can get a little fuzzy and tricky, because when you share space with someone like a house, there's going to be a little bit of negotiation around boundaries.
Yeah.
And it's harder with loved ones to say, if you do this, I'll do that, because it can start, that could drive conflict. But part of having good boundaries is also explaining them. So if you're able to have good communication with your family and say, it's important to me that I get this thing done in the space of an hour and need quiet to do it. Please respect that I do that. They, hopefully, because they love you, are going to say, actually, yes, we do respect that she's going to do that, and we are going to do as she asks, because we love her and we want her to be happy.
Yeah, yeah. This is just an example to make setting boundary for the audience. They can visualize what setting boundaries. I'm in a house on my own, so there is no noise. I just created that scenario for us to know what setting boundary is and what it is not.
Yeah, and it is a tricky one. I think that the more, when we share with other people, our edges can bounce up against their edges, and we do need to be careful with that. But it is also quite reasonable to say, well, if you do this, then I'm going to, for instance, you could, for instance, say, if you're going to be too noisy and knock on the door while recording podcasts, I'm going to hire an office somewhere and record there, for instance. That would also be a boundary, but to a point that would only affect you.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one because it's not as simple as just only looking out for yourself. There's always going to be a little bit of negotiation with the people that we love.
Yes. What other things that we need to know about setting boundaries?
I think that when it comes to setting boundaries, we need to have a good sense of how much they can be flexible as well, because some boundaries might want to keep very hard. Some we might want to have be flexible, that we can go so far and no further. And it's about communication, about being very clear about it, because it wouldn't be very reasonable to become very have a conflict with someone for not following a boundary if you haven't clearly communicated the boundary. Mm-hmm. And of course, the way that we hope that other people will respect our boundaries, we've got to respect other people's as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Communication is key. And respecting. Mm-hmm. Yes. Nice. Shall we talk more about inner critic and learn more about your perspective, your approach, what works for you?
The inner critic is such a powerful one because it kind of has two sides. On the one hand, the inner critic can leave us feeling really, really lousy. But on the other hand, we might think, well, if I didn't have the inner critic, I might not push myself so hard. So it can actually be a really great motivator to kind of prove it wrong or to make a point. And that's where making friends with the inner critic comes in. We don't want to get rid of it, and we can't get rid of it because it is a part of us. We can't cut out a part of us. But they do say what we resist persists. And the more we try to squash down or fight or deny parts of ourselves, the louder they get. And the inner critic can lead us to lash out against ourselves and against other people. And that's not okay. So by recognizing that the inner critic is scared and very self-protective, we can reduce the suffering in ourselves and in other people. It comes from quite a sort of young part of the brain. The way that I tend to visualize it is, when you have, say, a small child who's saying, look, 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 look. If we don't pay attention, it just gets louder. And sometimes we just need to turn to it and go, yes, I see that. Very nice. And have that little bit of acknowledgement in each way, witnessing, seeing, saying, yes, I see what you're showing me. This is what I think of it. Awesome. And that works so much better. It's a very tricky one, because very often when we have an inner critic, we're so used to hearing them all the time that we don't even realize that it's inner critic anymore. We think it's just the way things are, and we end up following rules or having beliefs that are so buried so deeply that we don't even realize that they're specific beliefs anymore. They just seem as self-evident as the sky is blue. So we think, well, I am not someone who can perform that thing, or I can't write that thing, or I'm not someone who can have that big job. we don't even stop to think that it's inner critic. It's just
Mhm.
that's the way the world is, like gravity, you know, and exploring that gently and sitting with the fear and anxiety that comes with facing the inner critic is a very powerful piece of work.
Yes, yes. Well, I appreciate the work you do to help others, but who helps you or how do you help yourself while helping others?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a great question, because of course I'd be a big old hypocrite if I didn't have some kind of self-care going on. Um,
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. I have two clinical supervisors. All therapists are supposed to have clinical supervision, which is someone who looks over our practice, looks after us, someone we have for backup or support if we're worried about something or if something's not going well, or even to celebrate our wins as well. So I have two supervisors who do that for me, as well as, of course, I'm doing that for the counsellors. I do have a lot of friends. I'm very fortunate. I have my husband. I have my silly cat. I have my hobbies. I dance and I paint and I do various other things. And so I've got different areas of my life that all have good things in. I don't rely on just one. And I realize I'm very lucky to have so much. So I've actually got quite a team looking after me, really. You know, and of course, my wonderful colleagues. There's a lot of networking groups for counsellors, because working by yourself in private practice can actually be very lonely and quite difficult. So there's all these networking groups. There's always someone that I can reach out and talk to. I'm really lucky.
Nice. I'm so happy to hear that. You mentioned something really important, celebrating wins.
Mm-hmm.
Small, no matter whether they are small or big wins. What can you say about that?
I think that it's very easy for us to have a very narrow definition of what success or achievement looks like. Partly it's cultural, I think partly it's the inner critic getting in there again that says, oh no, that doesn't count. So I think it is important to celebrate the small steps. I think that when it comes to making progress in any aspect of life, it's the small steps, the small wins that building up on each other that make the big difference. We're always looking for the big win, the big sign that gives us, you know, the shiny certificate that gives us something to point to. And while that's great, we can't overlook the small ones as well. So I
Mhm.
think it is very important, even or even especially if there's a part of us saying, oh, well, it doesn't count, anyone could have done it, etc. Well, it wasn't anyone who did it, it was you. So celebrate that.
Absolutely, yes. Enjoy your journey,
Yeah,
not
because
only
otherwise, what's it all
destination.
for?
Yeah. If you're waiting a year or I don't know, 2 years or 3 years to celebrate that big goal, what will motivate you on a daily basis to keep going? It's those small wins, small achievements, and you acknowledge and you say to yourself, well done me. I've done this. I did this. Tomorrow I can do this. I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That slow, steady progress, and it's easy to kind of overlook that and forget how far we've come, especially when we're looking ahead to something big. It might seem very far away. We do need to look back occasionally and go, oh, but look how far I've already come. That can remind us that actually we've already proven we've got the capability to do more.
Yes. Yes. And I know something about you, which I love. You keep is it self-compassion letter?
I do, yes. This
Is
is
that
something
nice?
that I did love it. It's something that all those years ago it was a something suggested when I did my compassion focused therapy training of writing yourself a compassionate letter, and I thought this is good. And I set myself the target to write one a week, and I do that at the every Friday. I even put it in my planner, write my compassionate letter, and I've been doing that for, well, that'll be going on 4 years come this autumn. So I have a couple of hundred of these letters sitting in a very pretty journal that I write in with a very pretty pen. And it just gives me that just 20 minutes just to sit and focus and just keep that self-compassion tank topped up.
You never missed a Friday?
No.
Wow.
No, I always make time for it.
How do you maintain that commitment to write every Friday compassionate letter?
Force of habit and just having it in my planner. It's become part of my routine. I get up in the morning on a Friday. Friday is my admin day with work. I don't have appointments that day. And it's just the first thing I do. It takes me 20 minutes, if that, just one page, just again, it's the small steps, the small wins. And they're actually quite lovely to look back on as well. When I look at ones from a couple of years ago and think, oh, that thing was really bothering me. I struggled with it, but I know now looking back that I succeeded at it. It's actually really nice.
Yes, yes. It's similar to what I keep. I keep a box full of gratitude messages.
Wow.
So in the morning, just I write 3 things I'm grateful for, and I put them in that box. And as you said, when I go back to that and I start reading, and I remember those days, and just yay, I
That's
love that.
wonderful. I love it.
It helps. It helps to set your mind first thing in the morning, that you're not starting from zero, or you have got things. Yes, you are aiming to achieve something more, but don't forget that you are blessed. You've got things. Yeah, and be grateful and be happy while working towards achieving more. There is nothing wrong with achieving more, but also there is nothing wrong with acknowledging that you are already enough, you've got things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is really important because one of the things that I was told when I was training to be a teacher many, many years ago was that for every negative comment that you give to your class, you need to give 7 positive comments because negative comments affect mentality that much more. They're that much more intense, which later I realized actually fits in really well with the compassion focused model, which says that the brain is a threat detection machine and criticism is in itself threatening, that actually we're very good at looking for the bad, which makes sense because those are the things that we need to be safe from, we need to be protected from. So we're always looking out for danger. That helps us to stay alive. But it does mean that your brain, in an evolutionary sense, doesn't really care that you're happy, just that you're surviving. So we probably need, and there's estimates between 5 and 9 times as many positive comments, positive interactions than negative ones in order to even out. But it can be really hard to remember that. So that's why I really love that box, because you are building up that store of that large number of positive interactions and positive things, or like my compassionate letter, just to try and balance that out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Okay, we're coming towards the end of our podcast. Um, any final message, powerful message to the audience?
I've got this quote by Aristotle on my desk that I'd like to finish with, which is, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And that's what my work is all about, helping people to know themselves better and becoming more wise.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing your time with us.
Thank
And
you.
I love the episode. I love talking about anything related to well-being, and I love also to learn more. And yeah,
Thank you for having me. It's been really lovely. And I just can't believe how lucky I was that I wandered in looking for directions. So thank you for having me today on the podcast.
yeah, we are also lucky at Diversity House for having you. And we enjoyed all the workshops you have run at Diversity House, and we will be having more.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.